Ever wonder why some people come through a crisis completely fine while everyone around them is scrambling? It is not luck, and it is not about having more food. It is about having the right food. The specific stuff nobody else thought to grab. Right now, there are 11 foods sitting on store shelves that could completely change how your family gets through a real emergency. Not fancy survival gear, not expensive freeze-dried systems, just everyday foods, cheap foods, foods that were fully stocked the last time shelves went empty everywhere else. And almost nobody in the prepping world is talking about them. I watched the standard prepper approach fall apart in real time. Rice gone within hours, canned beans wiped out by the afternoon, entire aisles just bare, and yet these 11 things sat completely untouched in those same stores. Not because they were bad, because nobody had ever been told to want them. That is the whole point of this list. The best survival food is not just something that lasts a long time and keeps you healthy. It is food the panic-buying crowd never learned to reach for. Number 7 is in your nearest Asian grocery store right now for under $3, while most preppers are spending $30 on something objectively worse. Number 4 has been around for thousands of years, costs almost nothing, and will outlast everyone in your household. It almost never shows up on any prepper list anywhere. All right, no more waiting. Let's jump into number 1. Number 1, bouillon cubes. This one catches people off guard, and the reason it does is worth understanding. Most preppers hear bouillon cubes and immediately think flavor, a nice extra, not essential. So let me change how you see this. Picture your stockpile after 2 weeks of actually living off it. You are eating rice and beans. Same thing every single day for 14 days. Enough calories, nobody going hungry. But something is quietly happening in the background that most people completely underestimate. Monotony builds up. It chips away at morale before anyone realizes it. It wears down patience. It wears down the willingness of the people around you to stay calm and work together. And once it takes hold, it is really hard to shake. Here's what most people do not realize about bouillon. 1 cube gives you the same thing as 2 full cups of broth. Takes up almost no space, weighs almost nothing, and when you drop it into that bowl of rice, it does not just make it taste better, it completely changes how the meal feels. That bowl shifts from something people push through to something people actually look forward to. I keep around 500 cubes under $30 total, 500 meals transformed. A while back, I spoke with someone who spent nearly 2 decades running distribution logistics for a major food company. He told me there was basically no shortage event for bouillon during the entire 2024 supply disruption period. While broth, canned soups, and seasoning blends were getting cleared out across the country, bouillon sat untouched. Nobody panic buys bouillon. That is exactly why it belongs here. For storage, get the cubes out of their cardboard boxes immediately. Cardboard soaks up moisture. Move them into mason jars with a silica gel packet per jar. Stored that way, they will outlast pretty much everything else in your pantry. One more thing most people skip in a survival situation. Concentrated sodium and minerals are not just about flavor. They replace electrolytes. When people are working hard, sweating, and dealing with serious stress, electrolyte imbalance becomes a real health problem. Military ration developers figured this out long ago. There is a reason bouillon has been in field rations for decades. Number 2, nutritional yeast. I want to be honest about the reaction most people have when they first hear this name, because I had the same one. It does not sound like survival food. It sounds like something from a health food store next to supplements nobody can pronounce. What turned me around was a friend insisting it tasted like cheese. That seemed impossible for something that looked like yellow flakes. I threw some on popcorn just to see. The flavor surprised me. Savory, nutty, rich. Not exactly cheese, but definitely in that direction. Then I looked into what was actually in it. 2 tablespoons give you around 8 grams of complete protein. All 9 essential amino acids your body cannot make on its own, roughly equivalent to 1 egg. Keeps for up to 2 years without refrigeration or special packaging. Just an airtight container somewhere cool and dark. But the bigger story is something most people miss entirely. Nutritional yeast is one of the best plant-based sources of vitamin B12 you can find. And B12 is not optional. It plays a direct role in how your nervous system works, how your body produces red blood cells, and how clearly you think. In an emergency where you are eating a restricted diet under real stress for weeks, B12 deficiency becomes a genuine health risk. Most standard prepper foods do almost nothing for your B12 levels. Most people do not know that gap is there until they are already feeling it. During a 5-day power outage, by day 3, the flatness of every meal was showing up in the mood of the whole house. I started mixing nutritional yeast into everything. Rice, while it cooked, stirred into soups, mixed into whatever was on the plate. The difference was immediate. My kids, who had been picking at their food, started eating properly. One of them asked if I had made something different. I had added a tablespoon of yellow flakes. That was it. 5 pounds runs about $40. Almost always in stock during shortage events because nobody is shopping for it. Start with a small container. Try it this week and the prepping case makes itself. Number 3, full fat canned coconut milk. There is a gap in almost every prepper stockpile that almost nobody talks about. Not protein, not calories, fat. Your body needs dietary fat to keep producing energy in the cold. Needs it to absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K, essential for hormones and brain function. And most foods at the center of a standard prepper pantry have almost none of it. White rice has basically zero fat. Dried beans, barely any. Most freeze-dried meals strip out the fat on purpose because fat shortens shelf life. I understood this in theory. Then a 4-day winter camping trip made it real. Our group was eating solid survival food, rice, beans, dried vegetables. By day 3, we were all dragging in a way sleep was not fixing. Mentally foggy, cold in a way that made no sense given the actual temperature. One guy in our group, a serious long-distance hiker, pulled out a can of coconut milk and heated it with some of our rice. Within an hour, the whole group shifted. Energy came back. The fog lifted. It was the clearest demonstration I have ever seen of what dietary fat actually does to how a person functions when the body has been running without it. One can has roughly 50 grams of healthy fat, shelf-stable up to 5 years, around $2 a can, sometimes less at Asian grocery stores. Add it to rice and the meal turns creamy, calorie-dense, and much more filling. Stir it into soups and calorie content rises without increasing volume, meaning the same pot feeds more people more effectively. In a physically demanding or high-stress situation, your body needs more fat than normal. Cortisol production, physical work, and cold all push that requirement higher. Coconut milk is one of the most practical ways to meet that from a shelf-stable source. 50 cans in my stockpile, oldest in front, rotated into everyday cooking. Total cost under $100. Number 4, potato flour. This is the one I told you to pay attention to at the start. Found it by accident in a small European specialty grocery store. Bags sitting on a bottom shelf. Nobody buying them. I picked one up, had no idea what I was looking at, and put it back. That evening I looked it up. Next morning I went back and bought everything they had. Potato flour is not potato flakes, not instant mash. Real flour made from whole dried potatoes, what regular European households used to get through winters for generations. And there are 3 specific reasons it works so well for long-term storage that almost nobody in prepping has figured out yet. First, shelf life. In an airtight container, potato flour keeps for up to 10 years. Regular all-purpose wheat flour goes rancid in 6 to 12 months. That is not a small difference. That puts them in completely different categories. Second, no gluten. In a collapse situation, gluten-free options vanish fast and become nearly impossible to source afterward. And if anyone in your household has celiac disease, a sensitivity, or any health reason to avoid gluten, potato flour stops being a nice option and becomes a necessity. Third, resistant starch. It feeds good gut bacteria and slows digestion in a way that keeps you feeling full longer. When you are rationing food, that is a real and practical way to eat less while still feeling like you have had enough. During a 3-day power outage, I made flatbreads on a camp stove. Mix with water, add a pinch of salt, cook in a dry pan. 5 minutes. Actual hot bread in the middle of an emergency changes how every meal around it feels. It also works as a thickener. 1 tablespoon does the job of 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. A 5-pound bag costs around $8. Move it into a food-grade bucket with a Gamma Seal lid and add an oxygen absorber. That one step takes it from a good shelf life to an exceptional one. And during shortages, it sits on store shelves completely untouched. Nobody is buying it. Nobody is thinking about it. That is exactly the advantage it gives you. Number 5, ghee. I have a jar of ghee in my pantry that has been sitting at room temperature for 4 years. No fridge, no special setup. Just on the shelf. Used it to cook last week. Tasted fine. Actually, a little better than when I first opened it. Here's why that matters for building a stockpile. Ghee is clarified butter cooked long enough for all the water to evaporate and the milk proteins to be removed. What is left is basically pure butter fat. Without water or proteins present, the biological processes that make ordinary fats go bad simply cannot happen. Not a sales pitch, just chemistry. A neighbor of mine, a serious and dedicated prepper, went through a 2-week summer power outage. His butter was liquid by day 2 and unusable by day 4. His coconut oil had separated and started smelling off within the first week. Real money spent on supplies that failed at exactly the wrong moment. My ghee sat on the counter through 2 weeks of 90+ degree heat and did not change at all. I cooked with it every single day. When my neighbor came over on day 5, frustrated and trying to figure out what went wrong, watching me cook normally with a fat that had not budged was a significant moment for both of us. Your body needs dietary fat as an actual biological requirement. Most core prepper foods give you almost none. Ghee covers that gap without asking much of you. Keep it in the original glass jar at room temperature, out of direct sunlight. No Mylar bags, no oxygen absorbers. The product takes care of itself. I keep 2 kinds. Standard ghee for everyday cooking, and a cultured ghee with a richer, deeper flavor for when morale is low and food needs to feel worth looking forward to. That second jar earns its place on day 12 of a power outage. Archaeologists in India have found sealed containers of ghee thousands of years old still intact. Ayurvedic medicine has described aged ghee as medicinal for over 2,000 years. Meanwhile, most preppers are spending $30 on freeze-dried butter powder with a 2-year shelf life. A good jar of ghee runs $12 to $15 and does not expire in any practical sense. That comparison speaks for itself. Number 6, dried seaweed. Japanese researchers found dried seaweed in ancient temple storage containers over 1,000 years old. When they tested it, the nutritional content was still measurable. Remarkable history, but not the reason it belongs in a stockpile. The real reason is one nutrient missing from almost every standard prepper food. Something most preppers have never once thought to account for: iodine. 1 sheet of nori has more iodine than most people get across an entire week of normal eating. And iodine is not optional. It is what your thyroid needs to produce hormones. Your thyroid controls metabolism, energy levels, body temperature regulation, and brain function. In a prolonged emergency with limited diet and weeks of high stress, iodine deficiency becomes a serious health risk. Most stockpiles have nothing to address it. A prepping friend went through a 2-week power outage last year. Solid supplies by most standards. But around day 8, he started feeling unusual fatigue, trouble concentrating, low energy that sleep was not fixing. When he saw a doctor afterward, the assessment pointed to nutritional deficiency, and iodine was part of the picture. Plenty of calories, plenty of protein, 0 iodine in his entire stockpile. My family was fine because dried seaweed had been part of our regular cooking for months. A well-stocked Asian grocery store carries more variety than most people realize. Nori has a mild flavor and high protein relative to its calories. Wakame is loaded with magnesium, which matters for energy and mood. Dulse has a natural saltiness that can replace some of your cooking salt. My approach is simple. Crumble 1 sheet of nori into rice while it cooks. It dissolves almost completely. What you get is a subtle, savory depth that was not there before. Does not taste like seaweed, just makes the rice noticeably better. 3 types, a full year's supply for my family, around $45 total. Takes up almost no space, needs no refrigeration, and stays fully stocked at Asian grocery stores during shortage events when everything else is long gone. Number 7, chia seeds. When Aztec warriors prepared for long campaigns, chia seeds were part of their rations, not as a supplement, as a primary food source, valuable enough to use as currency because people had seen firsthand what they could do. That history is directly relevant to a modern emergency stockpile. Most people immediately think about omega-3s when they hear chia seeds. 1 teaspoon gives you more omega-3 fatty acids than a full serving of salmon. Unlike fish oil supplements that break down quickly, chia seeds hold that nutritional content for years when stored properly. Vacuum sealed in amber glass jars, stable for up to 5 years. But that is not what changed how I think about them. Chia seeds absorb up to 12 times their own weight in water. When you eat them, they form a gel in your digestive system that slows how fast your stomach empties. The result is that you stay full significantly longer after a meal with chia seeds than after the same meal without. I tested this myself. Normal breakfast of rice and beans, nothing added. Hungry again in 3 hours. Same breakfast the next morning with 1 teaspoon of chia seeds. Did not feel hungry for close to 7 hours. In an emergency where you are rationing, that is not just comfort, it is math. stretch the time between meals, and you stretch your food supply without anyone going hungry. That is a real and measurable advantage. There is also a hydration angle. In hot conditions, chia seeds help your body hold onto water more effectively. Researchers studying Aztec long-distance runners found this when examining how these runners sustained extraordinary performance in intense heat. Chia seeds were central to how they managed both hydration and endurance simultaneously. They need zero cooking. Eat them straight. Soak in water for 20 minutes and they form a filling gel ready to eat on its own. Mix into anything. In a situation where fuel is scarce, that is a practical edge most foods cannot offer. They also contain all 9 essential amino acids, making them a complete protein. For anyone without access to meat, chia seeds fill a meaningful nutritional gap. 10 pounds in my stockpile, about $60, a full omega-3 supply, a hydration tool, a complete protein source, and something that stretches every meal you add them to in a lightweight, shelf-stable package nobody ever thinks to grab during a shortage. Number 8, quality instant noodles from Asian markets. This one might make hardcore preppers roll their eyes. I am completely fine with that. Quality instant noodle blocks from Asian grocery stores belong in a serious emergency stockpile, not the 25-cent ramen from big box stores. The real products that families across Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia eat as everyday meals developed over decades by companies with customers who actually care about how food tastes. The reason this is on the list is not mainly about nutrition, it is about psychology. And the psychological side of long-term emergency eating is something most of the prepping community seriously underestimates. A few years ago, I did a 30-day food test, genuinely eating only what I had stored for 30 straight days. By day 10, enough calories, no one in danger. But the atmosphere in the house had shifted. My wife was quiet in a way that felt like exhaustion. My kids were eating because I told them to, not because they wanted to. The repetition was doing something to everyone that went way past boredom. On day 11, I made instant noodle blocks I had grabbed from an Asian market on a whim weeks earlier. The mood in the room shifted immediately. My kids sat up. My wife said it was good. People asked for more. Not amazing food, just different. It had layers of flavor. It broke the pattern in a way that mattered more than I expected. What separates quality Asian market instant noodles from cheap domestic versions? The noodles are genuinely better, often wheat or egg-based, with some varieties providing 8 to 10 grams of protein per serving. The bigger difference is the seasoning. Real spice blends, dried vegetables, actual mushroom extracts, fermented bases turned into powder, genuine regional soup foundations. The variety across brands and regions means a 100-block supply produces meaningfully different meals for weeks. Research consistently shows that dietary variety during sustained stress supports better decision-making and more stable emotions. The thing that quietly wears down your ability to function in a long emergency is almost never caloric deficit. It is eating identically every day. Something different to eat, even something simple, actively pushes back against that erosion. 100 blocks costs under $50. Complete meal in 3 minutes with minimal water. During shortage events, Asian grocery stores are almost never part of the panic buying wave. While conventional shelves get cleared, these stores stay fully stocked because most people in a panic simply are not thinking to go there. Number 9, textured vegetable protein. Most preppers have never come across this. The people who have are usually serious long-distance hikers and backcountry travelers who have worked out protein to weight ratios over multi-week trips. They use it because the numbers are hard to match with anything else. Textured vegetable protein, TVP, is dehydrated soy protein in small granules or chunks. Light, basically flavorless when dry, which is useful rather than a problem. 1 pound of dried TVP rehydrates into roughly the equivalent of 3 pounds of ground meat. Properly rehydrated, the texture is close enough to ground beef or turkey that most people cannot tell the difference in a mixed dish. Protein content around 50 grams per cup. The shelf life puts it in a different league from almost any other protein source you can realistically store. In airtight containers with oxygen absorbers, TVP holds its nutritional value for 10 to 15 years. Canned meat runs 3 to 5 years. Freeze-dried meat products are expensive and typically top out around 10 years. The cost comparison is almost hard to believe. The 1 pound bag is around $6 and gives you the functional equivalent of 3 pounds of ground meat. Freeze-dried ground meat runs $20 to $30 for much less. preparation is simple. Soak TVP in hot water or broth for 10 minutes. It absorbs the liquid, expands, and takes on a texture that works in anything calling for ground meat, chili, taco filling, pasta sauce, stew. The flavor comes entirely from whatever liquid you use, which is why bouillon-enhanced water makes a significantly better result than plain water. One more reason bouillon belongs at the top of this list. 20 pounds in my stockpile. Protein equivalent of 60 pounds of ground meat, a fraction of the space, lasting over a decade, costing a fraction of any comparable alternative. Move it into Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers or food-grade buckets with a tight lid, cool and dry. Number 10, powdered milk stored the right way. Most people thinking about preparedness have heard of powdered milk. The problem is most people who stock it are storing it wrong, and they will not find out until a real emergency. The mistake is leaving it in the cardboard box it came in. Cardboard pulls in moisture and lets slow oxidation happen over time. Powdered milk that has been sitting in cardboard ends up clumped, discolored, and off-tasting in a way that makes it hard to use and nutritionally weaker than it should be. The fix is simple. Buy in bulk. Move it immediately out of the cardboard. Seal it into Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. An impulse sealer costs around $30, one-time purchase. Stored that way, powdered milk holds its nutritional value and taste for 15 to 20 years. That is the gap between a 2-year shelf life and a 20-year shelf life. The exact same product handled differently. Solid nutritional value, good source of calcium, protein, vitamin D, and B vitamins. Versatile in the kitchen, mix with water for drinking or coffee. Use in baking for pancakes, flatbreads, muffins, build a cream soup base, even make a simple fresh cheese. 30 pounds in my stockpile, around $80 total. Decades of shelf-stable dairy with no refrigeration. Practical tip, start blending powdered milk with fresh milk in your regular cooking right now. A 50-50 mix is basically undetectable in most applications. Do it consistently and your family gradually adjusts. When you need to rely entirely on the powdered supply, it is not a jarring change. It is just how food tastes at your house. When any real emergency hits, fresh dairy disappears fast. Powdered milk is how you keep access to an entire category of cooking and nutrition that would otherwise be gone within the first few days. Number 11, hard winter wheat berries. Everything else on this list is a layer you build on top of something. This is that something. Hard winter wheat berries are whole unprocessed wheat kernels, the grain in its most basic form before any milling. And the way whole grain stores compared to processed flour is so dramatically different. They basically belong in two separate conversations. Regular all-purpose flour has a real shelf life of 6 to 12 months before the oils inside oxidize and the flavor goes off. Hard winter wheat berries in sealed food-grade buckets with oxygen absorbers hold their quality for 30 years. Some long-term grain storage specialists argue it is effectively indefinite under the right conditions. The reason is straightforward. When wheat gets milled into flour, the oils and fats inside each kernel get exposed to oxygen. Oxidation starts immediately and cannot be undone. The whole berry with its outer bran layer intact acts as a natural seal, protecting everything inside from that process for decades. The nutritional gap is real and compounds over time. When you grind flour fresh from wheat berries right when you need it, you get everything the grain has. The germ oils, B vitamins, fiber, minerals, all at full strength. Flour sitting in a store bag has been slowly losing those nutrients through oxidation since the day it was milled. The most common pushback is not having a grain mill. A solid hand-crank grain mill costs around $60. If you buy it once, no electricity needed. It gives you the ability to turn decades of stored whole grain into fresh flour whenever you need it with no dependence on any outside system. 200 pounds in sealed 5-gallon buckets. Total cost around $70. More than a full year's worth of flour for a family. Calorie density around 1,600 calories per pound, making it one of the most efficient ways to store calories that exists. And it goes well beyond flour. Cook wheat berries whole like a heartier, chewier version of rice. Sprout them over 3 to 4 days for fresh green shoots loaded with vitamins and enzymes, which matters a lot in winter when there is no fresh produce. Juice the wheatgrass from sprouted berries for a concentrated nutrient source. While other people are fighting over flour that will go bad before they use it, 200 pounds of wheat berries in your storage represents a decade or more of real food security from a single purchase. Here's what I want to leave you with. The prepping community is not doing anything wrong in the basic sense. People are taking it seriously, spending real money, doing real research. The problem is structural. Everyone is pulling from the same information and building the same list. And that shared list is exactly what gets wiped out first when a real disruption hits. These 11 foods exist outside that pattern. Nutritious, shelf-stable, versatile, and affordable. But the most important thing about them is that they are invisible to the panic buying crowd. During the last real supply disruption I went through, every single one of these items was still on shelves the day after the standard prepper list had been cleared out of every store I walked into. This is not about hoarding or getting ahead of other people. It is about thinking independently in a space that has quietly settled into a group mentality. And that group mentality, when a real crisis hits millions of households that all prepped identically at the same time, is not a strength. It is where the system breaks. The strongest stockpile is one that does not look exactly like everyone else's, because that overlap is exactly where the shortage shows up. Pick whichever of these 11 covers the most obvious gap in what you already have. Start there. Add one thing at a time. Build gradually. Rotate regularly. The goal is not a perfect stockpile built in one afternoon. It is a stockpile that is more capable, more varied, and more solid than it was last week. That is really all this is about.